Hello, we're Group 18, and today we're going to be discussing our country of Wales, which interestingly is the country with the most castles per square inch in the world. A brief overview of the topics we're going to be talking about today. We'll discuss the history of Wales and the demographics. We'll talk about the Hofstede value orientations as well as Kulkon and Stadtbeck value orientations. For media analysis, we have chosen the movie A Run for Your Money and the music video Maybe Tomorrow. After that, we'll talk briefly about the education system in Wales as well as business, and then we'll finish off with interpersonal relationships. Now for historical background. The area of modern Wales was first populated in 250,000 BC. However, historians believe that the Welsh people today are descended from the Celtic tribes that immigrated there from 500 to 100 BC. According to an article published on the website History Extra in 2019, the Welsh nation never really existed independently, apart from a few years in the 11th century, because from the year of 1066, when William the Conqueror became the King of England, the slow invasion of Welsh territory by English forces began, and it continued over the years. People consider the official birth year of Wales to be 1536. This is when the Act of Union was passed, which served to subjugate Wales into England even more. And another important event was the Act of Uniformity 1549, which required that all public worship be conducted in English, which was an attack on the Welsh language. And this is what connects Wales with Georgia, because Georgia also faced similar threats in regards to language from first the Russian Empire, then the USSR. However, here there were a lot of public protests and outrage when the threat was presented of Georgia not being the official language anymore. Wales was assimilated into the United Kingdom and they adopted English as their language. However, today there's a lot of government initiatives for popularization of Welsh, which shows that both of these countries value language as an important part of their culture.
Now I want to talk about the demographics of the country. More than 3 million people lived in Wales in 2018, and according to the UK census, Wales has the least ethnic diversity of any English area. So it can be said that in comparison to Georgian populations, the population of Wales is ethnically homogeneous, as there are just 4 large ethnic groups in Wales, whereas Georgia has more than 10 ethnic groups like this. According to the Welsh government, Southeast Wales is home to over half of the Welsh population. Between 1998 and 2018, the population of Wales increased by 8.2%. Wales has 2 official languages, Welsh and English. However, the main official language is English, which can be used in any scenarios, while Welsh has the official status only in a few but important situations defined by the statute. According to the European Commission, Christians make up 58% of Welsh population, while about 32% of the population states that they are atheists. Less than 5% of the citizens are Muslims. Moreover, religious groups of 4% of the population is not stated.
Hello, now that we have given an overview of demographics of Wales, let's continue with the value orientations of Welsh people. Interpersonal communication is based on many aspects that determine its core nature. These aspects define every step of it, how it starts or whether it starts or not, how it develops and grows between 2 parties, how it ends and how does it affect the parties involved in it. One of those aspects is value orientations. Let us start reviewing the value orientations of Welsh people based on Hofstede's value orientations framework. According to the digital media journal Translate Media, culturally the Wales had a low score for power distance, suggests that people in Wales generally believe that inequality based on economic and social background should be minimized. Regarding the value orientations of power distance, Georgian people have the same beliefs. However, in terms of uncertainty avoidance, Georgian and Welsh people are very different. Welsh people may be happy not knowing what their day brings, but Georgians tend to constantly worry about both short and long-term future. Welsh people live their days and enjoy the current ones, whereas Georgians plan upcoming days and spend their days worrying how their future days proceed. Now that we have covered Hofstede's value orientations framework, let us move to Comm and Stadtbeck's system and review the value orientations of Welsh people based on it. Regarding the human nature, Welsh people believe that humans are not necessarily good or evil, but a mixture of both. The best example for proving that Welsh is unique in this value orientation is the healthcare system. Public service values and associated behaviors are and must be at its heart. Welsh culture doesn't divide people as good and evil, and therefore their public service values, including the healthcare system, applies to everyone equally. Sadly, the same doesn't happen in Georgia. Georgians tend to believe that specific individuals to whom they had contact with are radically good or evil. According to Hofstede's personal blog, Hofstede Insights, Welsh children are taught from very early age to think for themselves and to find what their unique purpose in life is. This means that Welsh people are very radical when it comes to value orientations of relationship between humans. They tend to be very individualistic. However, their individual achievements contribute to their society's sole purpose to develop and evolve. Georgians are also different in this matter. Georgians' culture used to be very group-oriented, but things are starting to change, and a considerable part of younger generations are living with individualistic values.
Now we will talk about media analysis for Welsh pop culture. We chose the 1949 movie "A Run for Your Money" as the first piece of Welsh pop culture. What was interesting in the movie was how accurately 20th century Wales was portrayed. According to the BBC article in 2008, the largest number of men able to work in the Welsh coal mines was 271,000 in 1920s, and even after that, most of the next decades were spent by people earning money with coal mining, which is the movie's opening scene. Let us discuss the power dynamics, which involve white men, and values, which has the scenes within the workplaces that are filled with familiarity, implying that there are not many rules within the workplaces that the workers have to follow because they have been working together for years, which is a proof of low uncertainty avoidance and low power distance. Next in the values, we have relationships between humans. The group seem to be tightly knit, singing together in harmony, must easily prove that relations between humans are group oriented. They also seem to love experiencing the present fully. The film was fantastic, comedic, phenomenal, and a little touching. The final half hour was beautiful and a symbol of how people change for the better when we see how the story unfolds and the people evolve in unexpected ways and still find the change worth it. Next, we will be discussing the analysis of Welsh band Stereophonics' music video of the single "Maybe Tomorrow". The song and the lyrics were full of meaningful sentences that hinted towards feelings of insecurity, sadness, depression. The video and the lyrics describe how people feel when they're in a mentally dark place, which, according to the BBC article from 2018, is feeling like an outcast, like you are not normal. The symbol of the dark room could be interpreted as a dark clouds that surrounds a person, while the power dynamic is all over the place. We see men and women of different races and ages having different roles in the music video. The managers, performers, and the staff casually talking in a room, and the carefree interaction implies low power distance and low uncertainty avoidance. The change of relationship between humans from individual to group-oriented happens slowly, starting from drinking alone to having fun with his friends. The song lyrics emphasize the present and concentrate on the future. I think that the author lives for the better future day by day. Even if the deep sadness clouds his mind, he lives to maybe tomorrow find a way home.
Welsh educational system is quite similar to other European countries, but there are some differences. The schooling for children aged 5 to 16 is mandatory and public schools are funded by the government. Wales divides its education into the five parts: early childhood education, primary and lower secondary education, upper secondary education, higher education, and adult education. Primary and lower secondary education is considered to be the the most important, and this is when schooling is mandatory. Higher and adult education is voluntary and can take the form of university, vocational training, internship, etc.
As already mentioned, Wales is part of United Kingdom, therefore most of its economy is influenced by British trends. However, there are some differences, like Wales is a more agricultural country. There is an interesting tendency that over the past 2 centuries, Wales has been transfiguring from agricultural country to industrial, but the numbers show that it has negatively affected the country's economy. For example, for 1950, Wales' GDP was 2 times bigger than Ireland's, but for 2020, Ireland's economy is 4 times of Wales. This transformation of Wales' economy resulted in agriculture and forestry being accounted for only 2% of the total GDP. However, sheep and cattle raising dominate the economy of the central heartland, where Wales has huge farming areas. As for raising crops, harsh climate is a barrier for commercial development of this field, but major crops include barley, wheat, potatoes, and oats. Wales also has several small ports where major catches include cods and lobsters. One of the major industries in post-industrial Wales is, as already mentioned, manufacturing, which accounts nearly 30% of the total economy. Very active foreign investments is helping Wales to develop its high technology industries, resulting in improvement of transformation of all technologies over the entire country. Despite being agricultural and manufacturing country, more than half of Wales' GDP comes for financial services, hotels, and restaurants. More than 60% of employed people in Wales work in these industries, as well as there are many banks and insurance companies operating in the country. However, Wales do not have its own currency or national bank. There are some obvious similarities between Wales and Georgia. For example, we can take size of the countries. Both Georgia and Wales population is approximately 34 million people. Both of them are small countries which are located next to global economic giants like United Kingdom and Russia. However, the difference is that Georgia has its own currency and economy, while Wales is mostly dependent on England. Both countries' geography is somewhat similar, with many hills and mountains, and the vast number of natural beauties make both of them attractive to foreigners. Georgia's income, just like Wales, is greatly dependent on tourism. Both of the countries have the same history of transforming from agricultural economy to industrial, and the electronic production in Wales as well as in Georgia is becoming one of the biggest industries.
It's time to discuss the interpersonal relationships of Welsh people. In Welsh culture, similar to other British cultures, a low-context communication is preferred. This means that most information is exchanged via verbal codes rather than gestures. Welsh are more likely indirect communicators as they try to remain polite in most situations to avoid disagreement. There are no specific rules for greeting in Wales, rather it is proceeded similar to in most other countries. Men usually shake hands when they meet each other. In the case of women, they typically shake hands if they do not know each other very well, or kiss on a cheek and give a hug if they are good relatives. When men and women meet the first time, it is the woman's responsibility to initiate greeting, so she extends her arm firstly to shake hands. Personal space is very important in Welsh culture, since people from Wales act similar to US citizens, maintaining the most available personal space and avoiding touching each other. They are considered members of a non-contact culture. According to the above-mentioned interpersonal relationship characteristics, differences and similarities between Georgia and Welsh culture can be stated. Similar to Welsh culture, in Georgian culture, low-context communication is preferred. People do use gestures and physical signs, but interaction using words is dominant. Unlike Welsh people in Georgia are direct communicators. People prefer to deliver their opinion about a certain topic directly rather than indirectly. In terms of personal space, Georgian citizens are representatives of contact culture, as touching each other, standing closer while speaking is usual in this country. So we talked about Wales and discussed its historical background, demographics, value orientations according to Hofstede, Glucksmann, and Strodbeck. We also analyzed 2 pieces of media, a film, A Run for Your Money, and a music video for Maybe Tomorrow by Stereophonics. And lastly, we covered the topics of Welsh business, education, and internal relationships. Thank you for your attention.